This is On Assignment.
VOA News.
Welcome to On Assignment. I'm Imran Siddiqui, together with Alex Villarreal, and we're coming at you from VOA's Washington headquarters. In this episode, we go first to Mali, where local militia are fighting back against militants linked to Al-Qaeda.
We'll look at the doping scandal that cost American cycling star Lance Armstrong all of his Tour de France titles.
Then onto a bike of a different kind as Chinese Harley riders tour the American countryside.
And the world's working women still trying to balance the demands of job and family.
These are the stories you would want to stick around for, so join us on Assignment.
In the West African nation of Mali, self-defense militia from the north are uniting and training young people to fight. Their plan is to launch an offensive to liberate the north, which was seized by Al-Qaeda-linked militants in April.
VOA's Ann Look visited a militia's training camp in the town of Savare and spoke with On Assignment's Philip Alexio about the situation.
Who are these Al-Qaeda militants, and what is their larger goal?
The militants that took over northern Mali, they're three separate groups, but they all kind of are intertwined and interlinked. And their main ideological goal is to impose Sharia law, a rather harsh interpretation of Sharia law in northern Mali and for some of the groups beyond northern Mali throughout all of Africa, etc. And then also at the same time, these groups are also accused of having pretty heavy links to trafficking and smuggling throughout the Sahel, kidnapping rings, kidnapping for ransom, things like that.
Mali is a rather large country there in West Africa, so how large an area do the Al-Qaeda militants basically control?
They control the three northern regions of Mali, Gao, Kidal, and Timbuktu, which, I've heard estimates at about 300,000 square meters. Other people say it's almost 2/3 of Mali's national territory. So it's a humongous expanse of desert.
Well, now you visited, obviously, this training camp in Mali where really these are rather poorly equipped Malian fighters who are now being trained.
Meet the next generation of the Gondakoi. Its leaders revived the militia in April, shortly after armed groups seized Mali's three northern regions. Here, recruits work on battle formation. It's not clear what, if any, official role militias like the Gondakoi will play in any military offensive to the north. But 6 northern militias representing various ethnic groups have united under a loose coalition, the Patriotic Forces of Resistance, or FPR.
Well, you've got kind of multiple things happening in Sévaré, in the Mopti region, which is where I visited and which is just south of the front line, which is actually just south of the occupied territory. And you've got the Malian military, which was, very unceremoniously pushed out, defeated out of northern Mali, and then totally upset by this military coup in Bamako at the end of March. And then at the same time, you have these northern self-defense militias that are either being resurrected or born, new ones coming into being that are of primarily civilians. They were founded by ex-Malian military officers.
Yeah, you mentioned this Gondakoi, basically this generation of the Gondakoi. What is the Gondakoi?
The Gondakoi has about 1,500 fighters. New recruits live and train at this government-owned compound in Sévaré, not far from the Malian military base, just south of the front line. Most of the recruits are from the north. For now, they are using the few weapons they have for training.
The Gondakoi is a militia that was actually born, it was created by ex-Malian military officers from the Gao region. And it was born in opposition to the Tuareg rebellions of the 1990s. Keep in mind, since independence in 1960, Mali has seen repeated Tuareg rebellions in the north. And so in the 90s, there was a rebellion in the early 90s, and then there was a peace agreement. And there was a lot of frustration in the north as to, this peace agreement was seen as unfair, it was seen as not incorporating all the populations of the north, and it was seen as not really ending the violence and the criminality and insecurity that was happening in the north. So these self-defense militias, primarily from the Sahara and Po, the so-called dark-skinned ethnic groups of northern Mali, kind of rose up in opposition. And there's some very deep intercommunal issues happening in northern Mali. And, for example, the Gondokoi in the 90s were accused of massacring Tuareg civilians. So there's a lot of concern that this revival of the militias will also revive this ethnic killing, this ethnic cleansing, this communal violence.
And again, that was VOA's Ann Look reporting for us from Dakar, Senegal. The situation in Mali is, of course, very tense and complicated, and voanews.com will be watching it closely.
But time for a break now. Coming up, VOA sports editor Park Brewer joins us to talk about the rise and fall of Lance Armstrong. You're watching On Assignment. The International Cycling Union has stripped American Lance Armstrong of his 7 Tour de France titles and banned him for life. The move ratifies the sanctions imposed by the U.S. anti-doping agency. VOA sports editor Park Brewer has followed the story for some time, and he joins us right now. Thank you so much for joining me, Park.
My pleasure.
Tell us a little bit about this 1,000-page report that the anti-doping agency has put forward.
That's right, Imran. There were 164 pages of really chilling detail of the massive fraud that went on. In addition, 850 pages of addendum and documents that talks about a lot of the testimony and really does paint the picture of what went on.
And because, I'm a little confused about this because I keep reading these articles about Lance denying these charges and at the same time is challenging everyone that no one can prove that the tests that he went through came out positive.
Well, that's right. He's always maintained he took over 500 tests during his cycling career. Of course, he is now retired at age 41, banned for life, as we know now. In essence, there are some allegations from the past that he actually did test positive, and maybe it was covered up. But it's also a situation where the doctors, the pharmacists, and particularly one he was working with, they always tried to stay one step ahead of the game. That is, in other words, coming up with things that they could give Lance to cover up any evidence of illegal drug use.
How much can we trust these tests that they've conducted?
Well, the tests have changed through the years as the different drugs that have been banned have changed through the years. And we've seen that the same with the Olympics through the years. And the testing is as good as it can be for the time. And in fact, Pat McQuaid, the president of the International Cycling Union, says they will keep at this. They will keep trying to find the tests that can beat those who are using illegal drugs.
Okay, so he's stripped off the titles.
Correct.
What about the money that was given to him?
Well, that's the big question on what that's going to happen. We understand there may be some lawsuits in the works, and definitely he's stripped of his titles. How much of the money he may end up giving back, time will tell on that one.
Okay, and he stepped down as a chairman of the nonprofit that he was heading. But again, the question again that comes to mind is, let's suppose that even if he did that, what about the nonprofit work that he was doing for cancer research? What happens to that?
Well, as you mentioned, he did step down from the Livestrong Foundation. How much more involvement he will have in that is hard to say. Of course, he is a cancer survivor himself. He's been able to raise about $500 million for his foundation. In fact, a couple months ago when USADA had said it had all this information and documents from these witnesses, the Livestrong Foundation actually had an increase in donations. But let's not forget, it's fighting a good cause. It's trying to fight cancer.
So that means there's more to come on this.
Definitely. Time will tell, and we'll see what's going to happen. It's going to be very interesting because there's still a lot of people out there that support Lance, but many more against him now.
Okay, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Moving on, we're taking another break. Still to come, from Beijing to Pennsylvania, just to ride a Harley Davidson through the countryside. You don't want to miss that one. You're watching On Assignment.
Adventure, the open highway, and freedom. These are ideals that many Americans associate with the country's top-selling motorcycle brand, Harley Davidson.
Harley Davidson is popular overseas as well. En-Ming Liu of VOA's Mandarin service found a group of Harley fans who came all the way from China and paid good money to ride these big bikes through the scenic Pennsylvania countryside.
I sat down with En-Ming to find out more. Let's take a look.
Get your motor running. Head out on the open for adventure.
Over 40 years ago, the movie Easy Rider embodied America's counterculture, and Harley was the coolest way to leave society behind. But for this group of Harley fans from China, it is a status symbol.
In China, Harley Davidson is very popular right nowadays. In China, there are a lot of clubs forming in like big cities, like in Beijing. There is a Beijing HOG, which stands for Harley Owners Group, and there's Shanghai HOG. So a lot of people in China, they know this brand by watching movies. They know the American, the Easy Riders. They ride bikes on the open road. And in China, for Chinese people, it's very hard for them, to truly experience this kind of, freedom, riding a Harley Davidson on an open highway because the traffic is jammed.
We brought our Beijing members to experience the original American Harley culture. I'm very excited. It's really different. Beautiful mountains, beautiful water, just great scenery.
In a lot of cities, the motorcycles are banned there.
And what's behind those restrictions?
Because there are some safety concerns because not enough roads, actually, because of even for cars, you see big jams in cities. And actually, Harley Davidson motorcycle was banned some years ago.
But now that's changed. Now it's opened up, and you actually have Harley Davidson dealerships inside China
in
now.
China, and like I said, there are like a Harley, owners group in China formed their two clubs, and people are buying these kind of motorcycles. But in China, there's very limited roads you can really explore and ride your bike on. The whole idea is starts with a group, actually from a group of American people. They went to China in 2008, and they ride the Harley Davidson there. And after that trip, state government of Pennsylvania, they just thought, if American people can go over to China to ride, why don't we just invited Chinese people to come over to our state to ride.
17 riders and companions spent 12 days in the U.S., paying $4,600 to $7,300 per biker. Costs varied according to the Harley model they rented and the accommodations they chose. The tour provided as much time for sightseeing and shopping as for biking.
They come over to the United States, they ride on the open road and experience the authentic, the American, the Harley freedom, the spirit, and so they feel great, and they feel great about it, and especially the route they're riding, and it's specially designed.
Today's the third day of the bike tour. Relations between one another are friendly. Riding together, eating together, playing together.
The visit was organized by Nighthawk Tours. Harley bikers in Pennsylvania had first visited China last year and then put together a trip in the U.S. for their new Chinese friends. One of this year's stops was at the annual get-together of statewide Harley owners. Next year, Harley-Davidson marks its 110th anniversary. American and Chinese bikers will be celebrating in both countries.
Well, thank you so much, An-Ming. We really appreciate you coming on the show and talking to us about this. It was a great story.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Yes.
Can women in America and elsewhere have it all? Can they have both successful careers and fulfilling family lives?
Even now, with women making up a large part of the workforce, it's a question people are still asking in the U.S. Keda Kostreci of VOA's Albanian service was prompted by a recent magazine article to find out what women are thinking these days about having it all. I sat down with Keda for more.
It's a typical evening for Jen and her family. Dinner started a little late, but that can happen in a busy household.
Someone has to be home to do all the stuff that has to get done.
Jen is a consultant with a government affairs firm in Washington. She lives in the suburbs with her husband and two school-age daughters. Both parents juggle childcare and a lot of extracurricular activities with the demands of their jobs.
There are times when I think maybe I really want to be involved in that big negotiation, or I really want to be involved in that big issue. But I don't regret it, because I get home to see my kids.
Kata, this story was related to an article that was published in the Atlantic magazine by Ann-Marrie Slaughter entitled "Why Women Can't Have It All." And this was a very provocative article when it came out. I know it created a lot of buzz, and when I saw the headline, it definitely piqued my interest. So why do you think there's been so much buzz about this?
Well, I can say why it sparked my attention. I'm a woman and I want to have it all, and I have a family and I work. And so as soon as I saw the article, I wanted to read it, and I read it all, and I thought it was interesting and provocative for a few reasons. The title first, why women still can't have it all after so many years. And then the fact for me that it was written by someone who doesn't do gender studies but does foreign policy. And she was so important at the State Department, and she takes up this subject, which is very important. So that was one of the reasons that this sparked all this interest among women in Washington and being in Washington.
Right.
And of course, those are very important questions to raise, whether with 3 secretaries of state in the United States, women have achieved what is called equality, or that magical balance between being a woman, a mother, and a professional. These topics always spark interest in the U.S., and this was one of them.
And what did you find in talking to some of these working women in the U.S.? What did they think about this idea that they can't have it all?
We have more and more women leaders, and what we need to do is work to ensure that there's greater equality in the workplace, that women are paid equally to men, that we're valuing work and family, and that's all possible. We just need to keep working for it.
What are some of those obstacles that they face, and what do they want to see made different?
Well, for once, as Dr. Slaughter said, she noticed when she came to Washington that the workplace in Washington, working on someone else's schedule, is pretty rigid, and it hasn't kept up with the technology that has developed, and it has made it possible not to be like one of Professor Slaughter's predecessors that showed how important it was to show up and spend long hours in the office. And Professor Slaughter thinks that this is not anymore the only way to measure the commitment. Our audience is it's outside of the United States, and in most countries where, as you said, there is real discrimination against women.
Right. Well, the first thing to say is we still have real discrimination in the United States too, right? Women still only earn 78 cents on the dollar. So we're not all the way there yet. But I do take your point that, look, as Secretary Clinton has done a lot to publicize, obviously women live in terrible conditions in many countries in the world, and even to be allowed to work would be a huge step forward for many. That said, I've been amazed at the international reaction to this article. I probably spend as much time talking to journalists from foreign countries as I do from this country.
This article makes the statement that women can't have it all, why women still can't have it all. But your story posed the question, can women have it all? And so what were some of the conclusions that you drew after the interviews that you did?
Is if you're willing to have a compromise, and if you're willing to think that you can have it all, but maybe not at the same time, and try to manage that kind of conflict, then women can have it all, but also they need a hand from society.
Kata, thank you so much. This is definitely an important issue to discuss, and we really appreciate you coming on and sharing with us.
Thank you.
Our thanks again to Kata Kostreci of VOA's Albanian service.
It's fall in the Northern Hemisphere, and in the United States, some farmers are taking advantage of a new kind of moneymaker, harvest time entertainment.
And that harvest time entertainment can range from pick-your-own pumpkin patches for Halloween to haunted houses. But among the most popular attractions is the corn maze. Shelley Schlender has the story from Denver, Colorado.
Sometime in November, this cornfield will be harvested as livestock feed. But right now, it's growing an even bigger cash crop.
You'll just stay to the right here, see? Always touch the right wall.
I follow the kids.
These people have paid to get a little lost.
So we just go forward, keep going. Okay, I think we take the right. No, we can't take the right. It's fun, but we have no idea what we're doing. I agree.
Getting lost is so popular. Each fall, 100,000 people come to the Denver Botanic Gardens corn maze to do that.
You can make more off a corn maze than you can just growing the corn and selling it for feed or whatever.
Adam Lucas says growing a corn maze starts in the spring in an empty field. A consulting company, appropriately called The Maze, helps them create an inviting, leafy labyrinth.
They mark it with blue dye when the corn's only about foot, not even a foot tall. Takes them about 4 to 6 hours to cut it out.
They keep the paths mowed all summer so they're clear and ready for tourists in the fall. On her 100-hectare farm, 20 minutes northwest of Denver, Rochelle Wegley says agritainment can also work on a family farm operation.
We've been farmers since 1911.
Wegley grew up on Anderson Farms. She says they started a corn maze in 1999. Today, it's one of the farm's biggest moneymakers, along with pumpkins and a few more attractions.
Tonight, I will be the haunted school teacher in Homeschooled, and I will be popping out of a corner yelling at people for their homework.
And then there are these gel balls filled with washable orange paint.
We're here for the first time to shoot zombies with paintballs. We've never been paintballing before or zombie shooting. This is going to be a kick.
They drive through a cornfield. There's a zombie. They shoot their paintball guns. There's another zombie and another. After 15 minutes, the guns are empty and one of the zombies reveals his true identity.
That's my husband.
It was 17 years ago that the Maze Company created its first corn maze in Utah. This year, it helped more than 260 farms around the world do the same. A sure sign that this kind of agritainment is a growing enterprise. For VOA News, I'm Shelley Schlender near Denver, Colorado.
So as you can see, we have decided that we would also get into the Halloween spirit today.
Yes, and this is amazing for me because I just love Halloween. I haven't experienced this before because I'm from Pakistan, but
of course,
it makes me feel really good. And I got my shades on, as you can see, my bandana, because I was inspired to look at those amazing Harley Davidsons.
Yeah, you're inspired by the bikers.
Absolutely, I'm a biker today.
And the Halloween holiday isn't just about costumes like what we're wearing and fun. It's actually also serious business.
No, I don't believe that.
It is, it is. Listen to this.
Me.
Listen, this is actually going to surprise you. So the U.S. National Retail Federation says Halloween spending will reach $8 billion
My God.
this year, $8 billion.
Wow.
And 70% of Americans are expected to celebrate, with the average person spending about $80 on their own costumes, decorations, and
What
candy.
about the money to spend on chocolates?
It's a lot.
It
I
is
think you knew the figure for that, right? It's something like $2 billion.
$2 billion or something like that. That's a lot of money to spend on
A
chocolate.
lot of money on chocolate.
Okay. Well, in any case, if you're watching this after Halloween, just pretend like it's October 31st. You can catch all of our episodes online at voanews.com and on Facebook and YouTube as well.
From all of us here at On Assignment, thanks for watching and happy Halloween.
Bye.